A very beautiful, very hot alien woman. No alien man could get close. Until a human smiled on the distant, shimmering planet of Vierlia, the air itself seemed alive. Light danced across the floating crystal towers, and the twin suns painted the sky in soft gold and rose hues. This was a world where beauty was not just seen, but felt in the hum of the crystal gardens, the gentle sway of luminous trees, and the soft glow of the city streets. Yet among all this splendor, no sight captivated the citizens more than the figure of Leora, the alien woman whose beauty had become the subject of whispered admiration and awe. Leora was unlike any other being on Vierlia. Her skin shimmered like polished moonstone, and her hair flowed like liquid silver in the ever-present breeze. Her eyes reflected the sky itself, twin orbs of violet and gold, and every movement she made seemed both natural and enchanting. Wherever she walked, crystal dust seemed to rise slightly, sparkling under the suns. She was admired not only for her physical beauty, but for the poise and grace she carried effortlessly. Despite the endless attention, Leora lived a life of quiet solitude. Alien men, unable to bear their own nervousness in her presence, often froze or stumbled when near her. Some whispered of magical effects her presence might have on others, though no one dared say so openly. Invitations, gifts, and compliments poured in from all corners of the planet, yet Leora had never allowed any to touch her daily life. She moved through her city as a silent observer, appreciating her world, the soft song of glowing flowers and the hum of crystal fountains, without being drawn into the noisy adoration surrounding her. Her closest companions were her friends, mostly female, who had grown accustomed to her ethereal presence. They enjoyed her laughter and gentle conversation, but often reminded her of the peculiar effect she had on the males of Vierlia. "One day, Leora," they would say, "you will tire of being alone, but I do not think any male on this planet will manage to approach you without faltering." She smiled politely at such remarks, not entirely sure they were wrong, though she had never considered it much. Solitude was a comfort she had grown to cherish. One morning, as the twin suns rose over the city, painting the crystal towers in soft amber, Leora walked through the floating gardens. Each step she took on the glass-like paths caused a faint ripple in the air, as if the very atmosphere recognized her presence. She leaned over a pond where crystal fish swirled in intricate patterns, their scales catching the sunlight in prismatic reflections. She watched them quietly, her mind drifting as she observed the delicate patterns in their movement. It was then that she first saw him. He did not stand out in the usual way the alien suitors did. He was a human, part of a delegation from Earth sent to Vierlia to explore, study, and form connections. Humans were rare visitors to the planet, and the stories of their courage, ingenuity, and warmth were well known, though most alien citizens had never seen one in person. Ethan approached with a casual ease that immediately caught Leora's attention. Unlike the alien men who had attempted to impress her, he walked with no apparent hesitation, no stiff formality, no intense gaze of admiration. Instead, his eyes crinkled slightly as he smiled warmly, and the simple gesture made Leora pause. The smile was not flattery, nor did it carry a hint of fear. It was genuine, calm, and unassuming. For a moment, Leora felt a strange sensation, something akin to relief, as if she could finally breathe freely without the invisible weight of countless gazes pressing down on her. Alien men had always become timid, overwhelmed, or lost their composure entirely in her presence. But this human, he did not seem affected at all. He simply smiled, and that smile reached his eyes, carrying warmth that did not demand admiration in return. Curious, Leora moved a little closer, careful but unafraid. Ethan's attention shifted slightly, and he bowed his head politely, acknowledging her presence. She had not expected to feel this calm in front of a male, any male. Her heart beat slightly faster. a reaction she had rarely felt around those who had tried to win her attention before. Ethan, sensing her observation, spoke in a soft tone, using broken Viorlian, though she could understand him perfectly through the universal translator implanted in his communication device. "The gardens, they are beautiful. I have never seen colors like this," he said, his voice carrying genuine admiration for the world itself, not for her. Leora tilted her head slightly, intrigued. Most beings who approached her were focused entirely on her, neglecting the world around them. Ethan, however, spoke to her as if she were simply another observer of this incredible place, not someone to be admired or feared. She felt the beginnings of curiosity stir within her. "I watch the fish," she replied softly. "They move in patterns that sometimes remind me of the stars." Her voice was calm, deliberate, and she noticed Ethan's eyes widen slightly with interest. "They are like little dancers," he said, kneeling beside the pond to get a closer view. He held out a hand, not to touch her, but to gesture at the fish as if inviting her to see the scene through his eyes. "See how they turn like they know exactly where they need to be. It is beautiful." For the first time in her life, Leora felt that someone truly saw what she loved, not her outward appearance, not her beauty, not even her fame, but the simple joys that made her world vibrant. She had always wondered if someone could ever cross that barrier, that invisible wall that kept her admired yet isolated. This human was crossing it effortlessly, simply by being himself. They began to walk through the floating gardens together, conversing quietly. Ethan's curiosity about the plants, the floating lights, and even the crystal structures reminded Leora of why she loved her world. He did not ask about her beauty or her reputation. He asked questions about the gardens themselves, about the way the twin suns affected the crystal paths, about the delicate balance of life in this world. As they walked, Leora noticed something that rarely happened. The nervousness she felt around others melted away. She laughed at a small fish that leaped unexpectedly from the pond, and Ethan laughed with her, not at her but with her. His laughter was easy, genuine, and unpressured. It filled a space she had forgotten existed in her own life, a space free from the weight of constant observation. From afar, other alien males watched. They had tried for years to approach her, to speak, to impress, to capture her attention, yet none had succeeded. They were accustomed to failing, but they were bewildered by the ease with which this human moved beside her. No dazzling display of power or wealth was needed. No grand speech or elaborate gift could compare to the simple warmth he radiated. Ethan seemed oblivious to the attention. He asked questions about the floating gardens, about the crystal fountains, about the glowing flowers that responded to touch. He shared stories of Earth, about oceans, mountains, and forests, though Leora had never seen such things. Yet she felt she understood them through his words, because he spoke with sincerity and wonder, not pride. As the suns rose higher, Leora found herself showing him places she had never taken anyone before. Hidden crystal groves where the light refracted into thousands of rainbows, secret balconies with panoramic views of the city, and alcoves where rare flowers bloomed only under the twin sun's strongest rays. She explained how the flowers reacted to sound, how the crystal fountains created harmonics in the air, how the very architecture of the city was designed to reflect the natural energy of Viorlia. Ethan listened, asked questions, and sometimes simply smiled. That smile, it seemed to encourage her to speak more freely, to reveal what she had kept private even from her closest friends. The walls she had built around herself, not from mistrust but from necessity, began to feel less rigid. She realized that for the first time, someone could be near her without fear, without hesitation, and without the awkwardness that alien men always displayed. By the time the twin suns began their descent, painting the sky in deep oranges and soft purples, Leora and Ethan had formed a quiet understanding. They did not need grand gestures or declarations. A simple shared observation, a laugh, a smile, and the appreciation of beauty in the world had created a bond far stronger than any alien rituals or social expectations could achieve. Leora returned to her quarters that evening with a strange feeling of lightness. For centuries, she had been admired from a distance, approached only with fear or awe, and admired for a beauty that often felt more like a burden than a gift. Yet this human, simply by being himself, had bridged the gap. He had crossed a boundary that no alien male had ever managed to reach. She realized she was curious about him, not in the way alien men had been, with flustered admiration or nervous fascination, but in a deeper, quieter way. She wanted to see more of his world, to understand his perspective, to explore ideas and thoughts with someone who did not see her as untouchable or unattainable. Ethan, too, walked back to the human delegation with a quiet sense of satisfaction. He had not tried to impress, had not sought to win admiration, and yet he had gained something far more valuable, the trust and attention of someone extraordinary. He did not yet fully understand the depth of Leora's life, but he sensed that every day with her would be a discovery, and that the simplest of human gestures, a smile, a shared observation, a gentle laugh, could bridge worlds. And so, the first meeting between Leora and the human marked the beginning of something neither had expected. A spark had been lit, not from gifts or ceremonies, not from displays of power or beauty, but from the most basic, most human of acts, a simple, sincere smile. The following morning, Leora woke to the soft golden light of Virelia's twin suns spilling across her crystal-filled chamber. The world outside was quiet, but a feeling of anticipation lingered in the air. She had not slept poorly, nor had she felt anxious. Instead, there was a curious excitement fluttering in her chest, one she had not known in years. Her thoughts returned, unbidden, to the human, Ethan, whose smile had so effortlessly reached her. She wondered if he was already exploring the floating city or perhaps observing the gardens as she had done yesterday. Leora dressed in her usual flowing garments, their fabric catching the light and scattering it across the walls. She moved with the same grace she always had, but today she noticed that each motion seemed slightly lighter, as if something unseen had lifted a small weight from her shoulders. She stepped out onto a balcony overlooking the city, watching as the twin suns rose together, bathing the crystal towers in warm light. Ethan was there. Not far, yet not close enough to intrude. He was observing the city from a lower walkway, his eyes curious and unafraid. When their gazes met, he smiled again, the same calm, genuine expression that had first drawn her attention. Leora felt her heart warm at the sight, a sensation she could not fully explain but welcomed nonetheless. She waved, and Ethan returned the gesture. Deciding to meet him, Leora glided down the winding crystal paths that connected the floating terraces. The citizens of Virelia were already stirring. Merchants prepared their stalls of glowing fruits and delicate crystal trinkets. Children chased one another along the paths, and the soft hum of the city filled the morning air. Yet among all the movement she felt a singular focus, a magnetic pull that drew her toward the human. As she approached, Ethan turned slightly, adjusting his translator device and spoke in his carefully chosen Virelian words. "Good morning, Leora. Did you sleep well?" "I did," she replied softly, her voice calm but carrying an uncharacteristic hint of eagerness. "And you?" "I slept well, thank you," Ethan said, his eyes crinkling with warmth. "I was thinking about the gardens, the patterns of the flowers, the way they respond to light. I want to see more today." Leora's lips curved into a small, genuine smile. She felt a spark of connection with this human, someone who appreciated not her outward appearance but the intricacies of her world. "Then we shall explore," she said, her voice carrying the authority of someone used to being admired yet softened by curiosity and hope. They began their walk, moving through the floating gardens where flowers and crystal trees thrived in perfect harmony. Leora led the way, pointing out blossoms that shimmered with the changing sunlight, explaining how each responded to touch, sound, and even the gentle hum of the city's crystal foundations. Ethan listened intently, his eyes wide with fascination. When he asked questions, they were not about impressing her, but about understanding. "What causes this flower to glow brighter when I speak?" he asked, leaning slightly closer to observe the petals that reacted to his voice. "The flower responds to vibration," Leora explained. "It senses sound waves and amplifies its glow accordingly. Not all flowers do this, only some rare types that grow in shaded crystal groves." Ethan nodded thoughtfully, crouching to examine the plant more closely. "It is incredible. On Earth, we have flowers, yes, but they do not interact like this. It feels almost alive in a way I cannot describe fully. You are beginning to understand Violia as more than just a beautiful city," Leora said quietly, a hint of pride in her voice. She had spent years observing these gardens, studying each plant and finding joy in their patterns. Yet no one had ever taken the time to see them as she did, not really. Ethan's fascination felt genuine, and it warmed her in a way she had not anticipated. As they moved deeper into the gardens, they reached a secluded alcove where crystal fountains sang soft, harmonic tones. The water, suspended in elegant arcs, reflected the sunlight into thousands of tiny rainbows. Leora had always found solace in this quiet corner of the city, a place where the hum of life slowed and allowed her to think, to breathe. Ethan stepped forward, reaching out to touch the edge of a fountain. "It feels like music," he said softly. "Not just the sound, but the way it vibrates through the air. It makes me feel calm." Leora smiled at his observation, appreciating his perspective. "That is exactly how I feel," she admitted. "Many come here, but they only see the fountains as decoration. Few ever hear the harmony in them, the subtle conversation they have with the air and light." Ethan turned to her, his eyes meeting hers, and she saw a spark of understanding there. He was not just observing, he was listening, experiencing, and appreciating the subtle wonders of her world as she did. The connection between them, fragile and new, grew quietly but steadily. They spent hours wandering through the gardens, exploring hidden groves and secret paths. Leora showed him plants that glowed in the dark, flowers that released gentle fragrances when touched, and crystal trees whose leaves tinkled like tiny bells in the breeze. Ethan's questions were thoughtful and genuine, never intrusive, and his laughter at unexpected moments brought a lightness to the day that Leora had long forgotten. At one point, they paused at the edge of a floating bridge that overlooked a valley filled with luminescent trees. The wind carried a soft hum as it passed through the city, and the suns cast long shadows across the crystal towers. Leora leaned on the railing, taking in the view. "It is breathtaking," Ethan said quietly, standing beside her. "I have never seen anything like this. Even the stories I read before coming here could not have prepared me for it." Leora nodded, feeling a warmth in her chest. "It is a world of light and sound and color. Yet, I sometimes feel that others see only its beauty, not its depth." Ethan glanced at her, sensing her meaning. Perhaps they do not know how to look, or perhaps they are too distracted by appearances to notice what is really here. Her lips curved into a soft smile. "You seem to notice more than most." "I simply try to," he replied honestly. "I want to understand, not just look. That is how I learn, that is how I appreciate." For a moment, silence fell between them, not awkward but comfortable. The world continued its gentle hum around them. The sound of crystal fountains, distant laughter of children, the flutter of glowing petals. But it seemed quieter here, as if the universe had slowed just enough to let two beings understand one another. As the suns climbed higher, Leora led Ethan to a hidden grove known only to a few. Here, the flowers responded not only to sound but to movement, changing color and shape as one walked through. Leora demonstrated, waving her hands gently, and the petals shifted in soft waves of blue, green, and gold. Ethan imitated her, laughing when the flowers responded to his hesitant gestures. "You have a way with them," he said, his voice warm. "It is like they recognize you." "They do," Leora admitted. "They sense intention. Most beings cannot approach this grove without disturbing the delicate balance, but you move through it carefully, observing rather than imposing. That is why it responds so gently to you." Ethan's eyes lit up with curiosity. "It is amazing. Even your touch feels different, not because it is special, but because you respect what is around you. I can feel that." The day passed in quiet discovery. They shared stories of their worlds, laughed at small mishaps, a crystal bird startling Ethan, a floating flower brushing against Leora's hair, and slowly a bond began to form. Leora felt a warmth in her heart she had not known for centuries, a sense of companionship that went beyond admiration or appearances. As the twin suns began their descent, painting the skies in hues of deep orange and soft violet, Leora and Ethan returned to the central city terrace. Citizens glanced curiously as they passed, noting the unusual pairing, a human moving freely beside the most admired woman on Violia. Yet neither seemed concerned. They were immersed in conversation, sharing ideas, discoveries, and laughter. Leora realized that for the first time she had found someone who could be near her without fear, hesitation, or awe. Ethan did not see her as unreachable or untouchable. He saw her as a companion, a being to be understood, appreciated, and respected. The simplicity of that realization brought a strange peace to her. Ethan, for his part, reflected on the day with quiet amazement. He had crossed a barrier no alien male had managed to breach, not with gifts, not with ceremonies, not with displays of beauty or wealth, but simply by being genuine, kind, and curious. He had discovered that true connection required no grandeur, only presence and authenticity. As night fell over Violia, the city glowing softly under starlight, Leora and Ethan paused on a balcony overlooking the floating gardens once more. Lanterns of softly glowing crystal drifted through the air, illuminating the pathways below. Leora turned to him, her eyes reflecting the soft lights. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for noticing more than just what I look like, for seeing this." She gestured to the gardens, the fountains, the city itself. Ethan smiled, the same warm, gentle expression that had first drawn her attention. "No, thank you, for letting me see it, for sharing it." A quiet understanding passed between them, one that did not require words. The sun's twin lights had faded, leaving a soft luminescence, and the city seemed to hold its breath in that moment of connection. Leora realized that she was no longer alone, not entirely. She had found someone who could walk beside her, see her world, and appreciate it fully. And Ethan realized that sometimes, a single smile, a single act of genuine kindness, could open doors to worlds he had never imagined. The night grew calm over Violia, and the stars sparkled above like distant crystal points, reflecting the quiet bond forming below. It was the beginning of something new, a journey that would take both Leora and Ethan across paths unknown, yet filled with discovery, laughter, and the quiet magic of understanding. For the first time in centuries, Leora felt a lightness in her heart, and Ethan felt the joy of truly connecting with someone extraordinary. And it had all begun with a simple, human smile. The following days passed with a gentle rhythm, yet each moment seemed imbued with new significance. Leora and Ethan continued to explore Violia, moving through places that few others had ever seen. Each corner of the city held a secret, and Ethan's presence made those secrets feel alive, more vibrant than they had in years of solitude. Leora found herself speaking freely, sharing knowledge and experiences that she had always kept private. It was not a mere sense of companionship. It was something deeper, a quiet understanding that required no words beyond those necessary for conversation. They began with the floating groves at the outskirts of the city, a place where crystal bridges twisted through the air, connecting towering trees that glowed with soft, internal light. Leora often came here to meditate, but with Ethan, the space took on a new dimension. His curiosity was gentle, respectful, and sincere. He did not rush, did not demand, did not attempt to impress. He simply explored with her, observing the patterns of the flowers, asking about the sounds created by the wind through crystal leaves, and marveling at the subtle music of the place. "Your world is like a living painting," Ethan said as they paused on one bridge, gazing down at the glowing foliage below. "Every color, every movement seems intentional, yet natural. It is peaceful." Leora smiled, the sunlight catching in her hair, scattering reflections across the bridge. "It is intentional in some ways. Virelia's architects and gardeners have long studied the balance of nature and crystal. We aim to create beauty that is harmonious, not overpowering." Ethan's eyes lit up as he looked around. "It feels harmonious. It feels alive. I can see why you love it here." She turned to him, noticing the way he truly absorbed the environment rather than just glancing at it. Most beings do not see it this way. They see only the surface, the glow, the shine. Few notice the deeper patterns, the music in motion. "And that is why I enjoy walking with you," Ethan replied simply. "You see it all, and I can experience it through your eyes." For a while, they walked in silence, letting the natural rhythms of the floating groves guide them. Leora noticed a small cluster of rare flowers, their petals shifting in shades of silver and violet. She bent down and gently traced a finger along a stem. "These flowers respond to thought, to intention," she explained. "They bloom differently depending on the focus of the observer. Some come with fear, some with excitement. They have always fascinated me because they reflect what is within." Ethan crouched beside her, looking at the delicate blooms. "Then they must respond to you differently. You are calm, thoughtful, and patient. I imagine they bloom brighter when you are near." "They do," she admitted, a soft smile playing on her lips. "And they have always taught me patience. Even if I am lonely or anxious, observing them reminds me that life continues, that beauty can exist quietly without expectation." He nodded, clearly understanding. "It is remarkable. On Earth, we have things that inspire patience too, but nothing like this. Nothing that reacts to thought itself." Leora felt a sense of warmth she had not known in centuries. Here was a being, a human, who not only saw the external beauty of her world but also respected its depth, its subtleties, and its quiet lessons. She had never experienced such a presence. Most alien men who had tried to approach her were dazzled by appearances, overwhelmed by her reputation, or distracted by their own desire to impress. Ethan's presence, in contrast, was steady, grounded, and entirely sincere. Later, they came to a quiet pool tucked beneath a cascading crystal waterfall. The water sparkled as it flowed, creating ripples that reflected light across the surrounding walls. Leora knelt beside the pool, tracing patterns in the water with her fingers, watching as the ripples spread in complex, beautiful formations. Ethan mirrored her actions, creating his own patterns and observing the way the water responded. "It is mesmerizing," he said softly. "Even the simplest action creates a new form, a new reflection. It is alive in a way I never imagined." Leora's gaze met his. "Yes, it is alive and responsive. It reminds us that even the smallest movements have consequences, that attention matters. Life is not static." He smiled, the warmth of his expression reaching into her very thoughts. "And that is why I enjoy sharing these moments with you. You notice things I would overlook, and together we see more than either of us could alone." The connection between them deepened with each shared observation, each thoughtful question, and each moment of quiet laughter. Leora found herself feeling lighter, freer, and more open than she had in decades. The presence of Ethan transformed ordinary moments into extraordinary experiences, as though the very world of Violia had become richer through their companionship. Their exploration continued into the crystalline city center, where bridges arched gracefully between towers and the streets sparkled with embedded lights that shifted according to the time of day. Citizens moved gracefully among the structures, many pausing to watch the unusual pairing. A human walking beside the legendary Leora, engaged in conversation as if they were equals, not the observer and the observed. Some alien males whispered among themselves, their curiosity tinged with disbelief. None had ever come close to bridging the gap that Leora had maintained for so long. Her beauty and reputation had created an invisible barrier around her, one that no status, wealth, or gift could breach. Yet here was a human, crossing it effortlessly, simply by being himself. Ethan noticed the glances but did not flinch. He walked confidently, yet humbly, observing the city, its inhabitants, and its patterns. He asked Leora questions not about herself, but about the city's design, its energy flow, and the way the citizens interacted with the environment. Leora realized that his presence highlighted aspects of her world she had taken for granted, allowing her to see it anew through the lens of curiosity and wonder. As the day progressed, Leora introduced Ethan to the rare crystal blooms that only opened under the light of both suns simultaneously. They wandered through a private terrace, surrounded by walls of softly glowing crystal, where the flowers reacted to their presence. Ethan carefully stepped among the blooms, creating gentle ripples in the petals as he moved. "They respond to our movements," Leora said softly. "But not just to movement, they respond to intention. Your presence is gentle, and they bloom fully because of it." Ethan looked at her, his expression a mixture of wonder and humility. "Then I am learning more than I realized. I thought I was just exploring, but I see now that being mindful matters as much as anything else." Leora felt her heart swell with quiet joy. The human's ability to perceive, respect, and learn from her world was a gift she had never expected. It was not about beauty or admiration. It was about presence, patience, and understanding. She had known the admiration of countless beings, yet none had touched her life in this way. As evening approached, they climbed to the highest terrace of the city, where the twin suns cast long shadows across the floating towers, and the distant horizon glowed in vibrant hues of purple and orange. Here, Leora shared her favorite moment of the day, watching the city from above, seeing the subtle interplay of light, movement, and sound that created a living tapestry. "It is always different," she said quietly. "No matter the time of day, the angle of the light, or the number of citizens moving through the streets, it feels new. It feels alive." Ethan nodded, taking in the view with her. "It does. And now, seeing it with you, it feels even more alive. I understand why you love it here. But more than that, I understand why it matters who you share it with." Leora turned to him, noticing the sincerity in his eyes. "You are different," she said softly. "You do not see me as untouchable, nor do you treat me as an object of admiration. You see me." Ethan's smile deepened, gentle and genuine. "Because that is what I am. I see the world and I see you, and I do not separate the two. Both are incredible, and I am grateful to witness them together." A soft breeze passed over the terrace, carrying the subtle hum of the city, the fragrance of glowing flowers, and the quiet rhythm of life. Leora realized that she had never felt so connected, so understood, and so unafraid. The presence of Ethan, a human who carried warmth, patience, and authenticity in every action, had crossed a barrier no alien had ever managed. He had touched a part of her life that had remained untouched for centuries, simply through his sincerity. They sat together on the terrace as the suns finally dipped below the horizon, casting the city in a soft, twilight glow. Crystals reflected the fading light, creating 1,000 tiny reflections that danced across their faces. Leora and Ethan shared a quiet moment, speaking little, feeling much. Words were not necessary. The connection between them spoke louder than any language. Leora realized that for the first time in her life, she had found someone who could be near her without fear, hesitation, or expectation. Ethan's presence was steady, gentle, and entirely authentic. It was not admiration that drew her. It was understanding, patience, and the quiet joy of sharing a world with someone who truly saw it. And Ethan realized that sometimes it was the simplest human gestures, a smile, a laugh, a genuine question, that could bridge gaps between worlds, reach hearts, and create bonds stronger than any ritual or display of grandeur. As night fully settled over Virlia, with the city glowing softly under starlight and the hum of life continuing its gentle rhythm, Leora and Ethan remained on the terrace. They gazed at the city below, the floating gardens, the crystal fountains, and the rare luminescent blooms, feeling a shared understanding that had grown stronger with each step they had taken together. The bond between them, fragile yet undeniable, marked a turning point in both their lives. Leora had begun to feel a lightness and freedom she had long thought impossible. Ethan had discovered the profound impact of kindness, patience, and presence in a world, both alien and extraordinary. It was a quiet revelation. Two beings from entirely different worlds could find connection and understanding not through force, ceremony, or beauty, but through genuine presence, shared observation, and sincere appreciation of life itself. As they finally rose to leave the terrace, Leora turned to Ethan, her eyes reflecting the soft glow of the city lights. "Thank you," she whispered, "for noticing what matters, for seeing me and this world truly." Ethan smiled, the same warm expression that had drawn her to him from the beginning. "No, thank you," he replied gently, "for letting me see it all, for sharing it. I feel lucky to be here." And as they walked back toward the heart of the city, the bond between them felt stronger, unspoken but undeniable. Their journey together was only beginning, and already it promised discovery, wonder, and the quiet magic of connection across worlds. For the first time in centuries, Leora was not alone. And for the first time, Ethan truly understood the power of presence, sincerity, and the simplest human gestures. A smile, a kind word, a moment of genuine attention, to bridge worlds and touch hearts in ways that no one had imagined possible. The days that followed marked a new rhythm in Leora's life. No longer did she move through her city as a solitary observer. Now, she explored it alongside Ethan, the human who had so effortlessly crossed barriers no alien had managed. Each morning, she would awake to the golden light of Virlia's twin suns, her heart lighter than it had felt in centuries. She no longer feared the weight of endless admiration or the stares of alien males. Instead, she felt anticipation and curiosity, wondering what discoveries the day might bring with him by her side. Their mornings often began in the floating gardens, a place Leora loved for its quiet beauty and the intricate play of light upon the crystal trees. Ethan had quickly learned to move with care, respecting the delicate blooms and the soft paths that twisted through the gardens. Leora noticed how attentively he observed, asking questions about the behavior of flowers, the gentle harmonics of the fountains, and the subtle music created by the wind moving through the crystal leaves. "You notice everything," she said one morning as they paused beside a cluster of flowers whose petals shifted colors with the movement of air. "I try," Ethan replied, smiling gently. "There is so much to see. Your world, it is unlike anything I have ever known. But I think the best part is seeing it with someone who knows it intimately." Leora felt warmth in her chest. Few beings ever took the time to notice the details she loved, let alone ask about them. She had always walked alone, her days filled with observation but lacking companionship. With Ethan, however, even the smallest moments seemed richer, more vivid, and more meaningful. After a morning of wandering the gardens, They often moved to the hidden terraces and secret crystal groves scattered throughout the city. These were places few citizens ever visited, known only to those who sought solitude and quiet. Leora had always appreciated these spaces for the calm they offered, but now, with Ethan, they became shared experiences. In one grove, the flowers reacted to movement and sound, creating patterns of glowing color that shifted with their presence. Leora demonstrated first, waving her hands gently above the blossoms, watching the petals respond in waves of silver and violet. Ethan followed, laughing softly as he mimicked her movements. The flowers responded to his gestures as well, opening and closing in intricate patterns. "They bloom beautifully," he said, watching the petals dance. "Not because of me, but because I am moving with attention, not thoughtlessness. It feels like a conversation with them." "Exactly," Leora replied. "It is not enough to just move through the world. You must observe, respect, and respond. The world notices when you do." Ethan looked at her, his eyes reflecting curiosity and admiration. "And you live with this awareness every day. I can see why the world follows you, but I also understand why it feels lonely at times. Few can keep up with the attention you receive." Leora smiled softly. "It is true. Loneliness is the price of being different in a world that constantly gazes upon you, but with you, it feels as though that distance has disappeared." The afternoon often brought them to the central city terraces, where bridges arched gracefully over streets illuminated by embedded crystal lights. The citizens moved gracefully among the structures, some pausing to watch Leora walking beside a human as if nothing unusual had occurred. Alien males, who had long sought to approach her, watched with surprise and curiosity, their whispers filled with disbelief. Ethan did not notice the attention. He moved with ease, observing the city and asking questions about the way energy flowed through the crystal towers, the interaction of light and reflection, and the subtle music created by the architecture itself. Leora realized that his presence allowed her to see her city anew, to notice details she had long overlooked. Together, they uncovered aspects of Violia that neither had fully appreciated before. One day, Leora decided to take Ethan to the oldest part of the city, where ancient crystal walls held inscriptions detailing the history of Violia. The inscriptions glowed softly under sunlight, revealing stories of past generations and the development of the floating city. Leora moved her fingers lightly over the etched symbols, explaining their meanings, their history, and the values they represented. "These symbols," she said, "tell us not only where we have come from but also what we value. Respect, harmony, and understanding have always been central to our society." Ethan leaned closer, studying the inscriptions with interest. "It is beautiful. On Earth, history is often hidden in books or preserved in stories, but here, it is part of the very city itself." "The lessons of the past live in the walls," Leora nodded, "and yet few ever take the time to truly observe them. They are surrounded by beauty, but they miss the depth." Ethan smiled gently. "That is why I appreciate you. You show me both the beauty and the meaning behind it. I can see Violia not only as it appears, but as it truly is." As the suns descended, casting long shadows across the floating towers, Leora led Ethan to a terrace she had long kept secret. Here, the view of the entire city stretched endlessly, the crystal towers reflecting the golden light and the gardens below glowing softly. Lanterns floated gently through the air, illuminating pathways and gardens in a soft, magical glow. "It is breathtaking," Ethan said, standing beside her and looking out across the city. "Even after all we have seen, this view is unlike anything else, and now, seeing it with you, it feels complete." Leora felt a warmth she had never known. "I have always loved this place, but it is true that it feels different with someone else. Someone who sees, who understands, who moves with respect rather than fear or awe." Ethan turned to her, his expression sincere. "You are remarkable, Leora." not only for your beauty, which is undeniable, but for the way you connect with your world and now, for the way you have allowed me to connect with it. I feel privileged to witness it with you." For a long moment, they stood together, watching the city glow under the twin suns as they dipped below the horizon. The soft music of fountains, the subtle shimmer of flowers, and the hum of crystal structures filled the air, creating a harmony that seemed to resonate with their own thoughts and feelings. Leora realized that the human presence had transformed her experience of life. She had walked through these gardens, terraces, and crystal halls countless times, but now each step felt meaningful, each observation shared, each moment enhanced by companionship. Ethan's gentle curiosity and sincere appreciation had bridged a gap that no alien male had ever crossed. Ethan, too, felt a profound sense of connection. He had traveled across galaxies, seen worlds unlike his own, yet nothing compared to the subtle, steady bond forming with Leora. It was not about grandeur, power, or ceremony. It was about presence, understanding, and the quiet magic of shared observation. He had learned that the simplest gestures, a smile, a question, a laugh, could create bonds stronger than anything force or prestige could achieve. As night settled fully over Violia, they moved through the floating gardens once more, illuminated by the soft glow of crystal lanterns. The flowers responded gently to their presence, casting patterns of color across the paths. Leora guided Ethan through secret groves, teaching him how to move in harmony with the environment, how to observe without disturbing, how to interact without overwhelming. "You are learning quickly," she said softly. "Most beings cannot move through this space without causing disruption, yet you flow with it. It feels as though you belong here, even though you are from another world." Ethan laughed lightly, humbled by her words. "I think I belong here because you are guiding me. You show me how to see, how to move, how to understand. I only follow your lead." Leora shook her head gently. "No, it is more than that. It is your willingness to observe and respect that allows you to flow naturally. I only provide the space. You bring the harmony." They reached a small crystal pavilion where a single fountain played a soft, melodic tune. Leora knelt beside it, letting her fingers trace the water as it rippled. Ethan joined her, imitating her gentle movements, creating his own patterns in the water. The fountain responded to their combined presence, shifting in light and motion as if recognizing their unity. "It feels alive," Ethan said softly, "like it responds not just to us but to the way we are together, not separately but as a pair experiencing this moment." Leora smiled, feeling a depth of connection she had never known. "Yes, it is alive and it reflects harmony. It reminds me that shared experience is more powerful than observation alone. When two beings move through the world with care and understanding, they enhance its beauty rather than diminish it." As the night deepened, Leora and Ethan rose and continued through the city, their paths lit by the soft glow of lanterns and the reflection of crystal towers. The citizens of Violia paused to watch, some in awe, some in quiet admiration. Alien males who had once failed to reach Leora now observed from a distance, witnessing what they could not achieve. A human, simply by being himself, had created a bond with her that no ceremony, gift, or display could match. By the time they returned to the central terraces, the city had grown still, filled with the quiet hum of life settling into night. Leora turned to Ethan, her expression soft but filled with meaning. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for seeing me and for sharing this world with me so honestly." Ethan's smile was calm and warm, the same smile that had first drawn her attention. "No, thank you, for allowing me to see it all, for showing me not only the beauty of your world but the depth of its meaning." As they stood together under the twin moons that now hung above the city, a gentle understanding passed between them. It was a connection born of respect, curiosity, and quiet companionship, growing steadily into something neither had anticipated but both welcomed. Leora realized that for the first time she felt entirely unafraid of closeness. She did not need to retreat, hide, or protect herself. Ethan had crossed barriers not with force, charm, or ritual, but with patience, sincerity, and the simplest human gestures. The bond they shared felt natural, steady, and enduring. And Ethan understood that true connection could be created not by grandeur, power, or ceremony, but by authenticity, patience, and the gentle art of seeing someone fully, without expectation or desire for performance. As the city settled into a soft, glowing night, Leora and Ethan walked slowly back toward the hidden grove where they had first spent the day. The flowers glowed gently, responding to their movements, reflecting a shared harmony. Both felt the quiet joy of companionship, a bond strengthened not by beauty or fame, but by understanding, presence, and shared experience. In that moment, Violia felt more alive than ever. Its floating gardens, shimmering towers, and luminescent flowers reflected not just light, but the quiet magic of a bond formed between two very different beings. An alien woman whose beauty had long kept others at a distance, and a human whose smile and sincerity had bridged worlds. It was a beginning, quiet yet profound, a step toward something extraordinary. And as they paused once more beneath the glowing crystals of the secret grove, Leora realized that her life had changed forever, not because of admiration or fame, but because of one simple, genuine human smile. The days that followed carried a sense of quiet wonder. Leora and Ethan moved through the city as a pair, exploring, observing, and discovering together. Each moment felt new, and even the most familiar places took on a different glow when shared with someone who truly saw them. Leora's heart had grown lighter, her steps freer, and her smile more natural than it had been in centuries. One morning, the twin suns rose over Violia, spilling golden light across the floating towers. Leora stood at her balcony, watching the city awaken. She felt a quiet thrill as she spotted Ethan below, carefully examining the pathways and the delicate glow of morning flowers. Their eyes met, and he gave her the same warm, effortless smile that had first drawn her attention. She returned it, feeling a surge of joy. Descending from her balcony, she met him at the edge of the gardens. "Good morning," Ethan said softly. "Are you ready for another day of discovery?" Leora nodded, her hair catching the sunlight. "Always. Today, I want to show you the heart of Violia, a place few ever see. It holds secrets older than most can imagine." They walked together, the air filled with the soft hum of the city and the quiet movements of citizens beginning their day. Leora led him through a series of hidden bridges and narrow pathways, places she had visited only in solitude. Each turn revealed another marvel: crystal formations that reflected sunlight into 1,000 colors, flowers whose petals shifted with thought, and gentle fountains that created music in the air. Ethan followed attentively, asking questions, observing patterns, and marveling at the subtle interactions of life and crystal. "Your city feels alive," he said quietly. "It is not just built or designed, it responds. Everything moves together in harmony." "That is the goal," Leora replied, a soft smile on her lips. "Violia was created to be in balance. Every crystal, every bloom, every path has purpose. Yet most beings never see it fully. They see only what glimmers on the surface." "You see deeper," Ethan said. "And because of that, I see it differently too." By midday, they arrived at the heart of the city, a vast terrace where the oldest crystal towers stood, glowing softly with inner light. This place was sacred, rarely visited even by citizens. Leora knelt by an intricate fountain in the center, letting her hands touch the gently flowing water. Its ripples spread outward, reflecting sunlight in delicate patterns. Ethan knelt beside her, following her movements. "It feels alive," he murmured. "It responds to us, not just to movement but to how we move together." "Exactly," Leora said softly. Harmony matters more than anything. When beings interact with respect, the world responds. It is a reflection of the mind and the heart. Ethan smiled at her words, understanding more deeply than she had expected. I feel it. I feel connected, not just to you but to the city, to everything around us. It is remarkable. They spent hours in quiet observation, tracing patterns in the water, letting their presence influence the blooms, and watching the city's light shift as the twin suns moved across the sky. Leora felt a profound sense of peace, one she had not known in centuries. She had spent lifetimes admired from afar, feared, or left untouched, but now she felt truly seen, not as an object of fascination, but as a companion and equal. As the afternoon approached, Leora guided Ethan to a grove she had long kept secret. Here, crystal trees arched overhead, their leaves tinkling like tiny bells in the breeze. Flowers glowed softly beneath the canopy, their petals changing color with subtle shifts in light and sound. Leora demonstrated how to move among them, showing him the delicate patterns that appeared when intention and respect guided motion. Ethan followed carefully, creating ripples of light and color as he moved. "It is incredible," he said softly. "Even the simplest step creates something beautiful. It is alive, yes, but more than that, it feels thoughtful." "Yes," Leora replied, her eyes reflecting the soft glow. "Life is not just about existence. It is about how we interact with it, how we move through it, and how we respect it. That is what makes it truly alive." They spent the remainder of the day exploring this grove, sharing quiet laughter as they discovered patterns, learning together, and appreciating the subtle magic of the place. Leora realized that with Ethan, she no longer felt the isolation that had defined her centuries. He had crossed barriers no alien male had ever breached, not with gifts, not with grandeur, not with ceremony, but with patience, authenticity, and a simple human willingness to see. As night began to fall, the twin moons rose over Violia, casting a gentle glow across the floating towers and gardens. Lanterns drifted softly through the air, illuminating the city in a warm, serene light. Leora led Ethan to a terrace overlooking the entire city. The view was breathtaking. The crystal towers reflected the moon's light, the gardens glowed softly, and the fountains sparkled with gentle music. "This is the heart of Violia," she said softly. "Few ever see it in this light. It is a reminder of what we value: harmony, respect, and understanding." Ethan looked out over the city, his expression quiet and thoughtful. "It is beautiful," he said finally, "and now, seeing it with you, it feels complete. Not just the city, but the experience, the life, the connection." Leora felt her heart swell. "You have changed how I see everything. Even places I have known for centuries feel new because of your presence. You do not just observe, you participate, you respect, you understand. That is more than I have ever asked of anyone." Ethan turned to her, a gentle smile on his face. "I have learned from you. You have shown me how to see, how to feel, how to move through a world that is both beautiful and alive. I am grateful for every moment we share." The soft hum of the city surrounded them, and for a moment all was still. The fountain's gentle music, the glow of the crystal towers, and the rustle of glowing leaves created a quiet harmony that reflected their bond. It was not a bond born of power, beauty, or status. It was one born of understanding, respect, and the quiet joy of sharing life together. Leora felt a sense of liberation she had not known in centuries. She no longer needed to guard herself against admiration, against intrusion, against those who sought to approach her for the wrong reasons. Ethan had crossed the greatest barrier simply by being himself, kind, patient, and genuinely curious. He had reminded her that connection was not about appearances or rituals, but about presence, sincerity, and shared experience. Ethan, too, felt a deep sense of fulfillment. He had crossed worlds, encountered marvels beyond imagination, and yet nothing compared to the connection he had formed with Leora. She had shown him a universe full of life, detail, and harmony, and he had learned that the simplest gestures, a smile, a question, a moment of attention, could bridge not only worlds but hearts. As the night deepened, they walked slowly back through the gardens, the glow of lanterns and luminescent flowers guiding their path. Leora felt a quiet joy in every step, every sound, every reflection of light. Ethan moved beside her with the same gentle care he had shown since the beginning, his presence steady, reassuring, and entirely genuine. They reached a secluded grove, their favorite place, where the flowers glowed in patterns that reflected their movements. Leora knelt beside a small fountain, tracing the ripples with her fingers. Ethan joined her, creating his own patterns in the water. The fountain responded to their presence, light and color moving in harmony with their actions. "It is beautiful," Ethan said softly. "Not just the fountain, but this connection. It feels alive because we are part of it together." "Yes," Leora replied. "Life is richer when shared. Even the smallest gestures, when done with sincerity, create meaning. That is what makes our world, and any world, truly alive." They spent hours in quiet observation, laughing softly at small discoveries, sharing insights, and marveling at the patterns of life around them. Leora felt a sense of completeness she had never known. For centuries, she had moved through her world admired, feared, or untouched. Now she felt seen, appreciated, and connected in a way she had never imagined possible. As the twin moons hung high in the sky, casting a soft glow over Violia, Leora and Ethan stood together, gazing at the city that had been her home for centuries. They had walked its gardens, explored its hidden paths, and shared its secrets. But more importantly, they had discovered a connection deeper than beauty, stronger than admiration, and richer than any tradition. The bond of shared presence, understanding, and respect. Leora turned to Ethan, her eyes reflecting the soft moonlight. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for seeing me, for understanding, and for sharing this world with me." Ethan smiled, calm and warm. "No, thank you, for showing me the depth of your world and for allowing me to be part of it. I feel fortunate to be here." In that moment, Violia seemed to glow brighter, its floating gardens, crystal towers, and luminescent flowers reflecting not only light but the quiet magic of connection. Leora realized that her life had changed forever. She was no longer alone. She had found someone who could walk beside her, see her world, and appreciate it fully. Ethan understood that true connection was not built on grandeur, power, or appearances. It was built on patience, sincerity, and the simple willingness to see and be seen. And in Leora, he had found not only a world full of wonder but a companion whose understanding and presence transformed everything. As the night settled, they remained together in their secret grove, the flowers glowing softly around them, the city quiet and serene. Both knew that their journey was only beginning, but already it promised discovery, wonder, and the profound magic of companionship. For the first time in centuries, Leora felt light, free, and truly alive. And for the first time, Ethan fully understood the extraordinary power of a single human smile, a gesture that had crossed worlds, touched hearts, and created a bond stronger than anything either had imagined possible. The city of Violia, bathed in the soft glow of twin moons and crystal light, seemed to breathe with them. It reflected the beauty of the world itself, but more importantly, it reflected the quiet, extraordinary beauty of a connection built not on appearances, but on respect, understanding, and shared life. And so, under the calm light of night, two very different beings from distant worlds stood together, not as master and observer, nor as admirer and admired, but as companions, equals in curiosity, in wonder, and in the simple, profound joy of being seen and understood. It was the beginning of something timeless, a story of harmony, friendship, and the quiet power of sincerity. A human and an alien, united not by magic or force, but by the gentle, enduring light of understanding, respect, and the heart's purest smile.